Honestly, I'm so full of anger. We're going to cover all the stuff Trump has done in the past day or two, but we're also going to try to remember that he doesn't represent all of us. So we'll take you through the first few days of the administration. We'll try not to let anger boil over, and we'll have a discussion about what we do now. Inshallah. Welcome back to the podcast for the 54% of Americans who regularly vote for progress in every election and want to convince their friends and family members to join our majority. This is Majority 54.
Well, Jason, a lot has happened since the last time we spoke, but I think the most important thing to start with here was Trump's pardoning of January 6th defendants, criminals, however you want to describe them. Let's go to a clip of Trump signing this order.
People is this?
I think this order will apply to approximately 1,500 people, sir.
So this is January 6th. These are the hostages. Approximately 1,500 for a pardon.
Yes.
Full pardon.
Full pardon or commutations?
Full pardon. We have about 6 commutations in there where we're doing further research.
Okay.
Nice to see you again.
Just, that's the first time I've actually seen the clip. I've just heard the audio, and I realized that the guy who handed him that and answered his question about who's in there, that's Will Scharf, his lawyer, who ran for Attorney General of Missouri and is weirdly like a huge fan of my book. And it's just the weirdest thing because I just can't stand anything the guy stands for. And then I get these human feeling direct messages from the guy. It's very strange. But anyway, I just realized that was him.
Well, needless to say, there's a lot of stuff that Trump has done, which we're going to have to debate. Like, are the American people with him? Is this what he promised and what the American people want, et cetera? And I actually think there is important debates to be had about some of the stuff he's done over the past few days. This is not one of them. This is wildly unpopular, incredibly inappropriate. And Trump was asked about one particular subsection of these folks, which would be the people who assaulted police officers. Let's go to this clip.
Violently,
yes,
damn near tried to kill him.
Well, to use the few good men,
detain them, took them captive, beat them.
To use the few good men term, is there any other kind?
Yes.
All right, let's go to this clip.
You would agree that it's never acceptable to assault a police officer.
Sure.
Right? So then if I can, among those you pardoned, DJ Rodriguez, he drove a stun gun into the neck of a DC police officer who was abducted by the mob that day. He later confessed on video to the FBI and pleaded guilty for his crimes. Why does he deserve a pardon?
Well, I don't know. Was it a pardon? Because we're looking at commutes and we're looking at pardons. Okay, well, we'll take a look at everything. But I can say this. Murderers today are not even charged. You have murderers that aren't charged all over. You take a look at what's gone on in Philadelphia, take a look at what's gone on in LA, where people murder people and they don't get charged. These people have already served years in prison, and they've served them viciously. It's a disgusting prison. It's been horrible. It's inhumane. It's been a terrible, terrible thing. These people have already served a long period of time, and I made a decision to give a pardon. Joe Biden gave a pardon yesterday to a lot of criminals. These are criminals that he gave a pardon to. And you should be asking that question. Why did he give a pardon to all of these people that committed crimes? Why did he give a pardon to the J6 Unselect Committee when they burned and destroyed all documents which showed that they did what was wrong, not me? Wait a minute. Why did they give a pardon to all of his relatives, his brother who made millions of dollars, to all these different people? He gave pardons. That's the question you should be answering. All right.
Dude, I've been trying to compartmentalize and it's been working right up until these executive orders. I don't know about you. I am consumed by anger, and I am trying not to let it fully consume me.
I think there's an important question about how to put all of this together and say, all right, well, what are the weaknesses in this initial front that Trump has put out in terms of not moral weaknesses, right? Because that is honestly at this point irrelevant. Everybody who's listening to this podcast by and large is agreed on the morality of this. The question is, how do you put together with the very, very limited opportunities we have to speak to the public, right? And I mean, we in the largest sense, Democratic coalition, independents, people who believe in the rule of law, right? We have a very small megaphone right now compared to all the powerful people that were on that stage for the inauguration, all the tech company CEOs, all the media executives. The Republicans control the White House, both houses of Congress, and the Supreme Court, right? You put that all together and say, well, we have a very small opportunity to make any case at any point. And what do we do with that? I think that is going to be a theme of this episode and many others after this. But before we even get there, I think it's important to just talk about the fact that this January 6th event, this might be our last opportunity to talk about it for a while. I mean, we could talk about it, but this does feel like a bookend of sorts, a very sad one. This was an assault on Congress, among many other bodies. This is what the GOP members of Congress, this is a supercut of various GOP members of Congress being asked about this.
Senator, what do you make of President Trump's pardons for violent offenders?
I'm grateful that President Trump is the President of the United States.
What I'm trying to do is figure out there are some commutations. To me, I just can't agree. I'm about to file 2 bills that will increase the penalties up to and including the death penalty for the murder of a police officer, and increasing the penalties and creating federal crimes for assaulting a police officer. That should give you everything you need to know about my position.
Yeah, I think they were absolutely justified. Again, I don't know all the cases. I certainly don't want to pardon any violent actors, but there was a real miscarriage of justice here. So I'm totally supportive of it.
For violent offenders, are you comfortable with that?
I haven't seen the details, but I think a lot of those pardons were definitely well deserved.
Do you think it's appropriate to pardon people who assaulted police officers?
Well, first of all, President Trump talked about that during the campaign. Joe Biden said he wouldn't pardon a lot of the people that he pardoned yesterday.
Are you comfortable with these pardons for January 6th offenders?
Look, as I said, as I've said before, we're looking forward to the next 4 years, not the last 4.
What message does this send to police officers who were there that day? If we're the party of law and order, what about the office? What about the people that were attacked? The officers that were attacked that day.
You guys have the same questions of Biden.
So the one person who had anything critical to say was Tom Tillis of North Carolina. The rest of them, you know, had selective amnesia, including, by the way, Trump, as he was signing the executive order, was like,
yeah. Oh, I didn't know who was in there. Some of these are probably commutations. It's fine. Also, by the way, just doesn't matter. But Trump's like, they were held in an inhumane prison. You going to do anything about that? There's still people in that supposedly inhumane prison. No, you're not going to do anything about that.
Well, I mean, it seems like based on these initial pardons that there are 2 types of folks who are going to get pardons. Folks who in any way did anything that Trump, like in defense of Trump, whether it was legal or illegal, obviously illegal because they're getting a pardon. And then folks that the big tech crypto bros really love, which was this guy, Ross Ulbricht, who was the founder of the Silk Road Project. Really good book called American Kingpin, I think it's called, by Nick Bilton. Fascinating story. This guy created a black market that was used to sell drugs, weapons, all kinds of stuff, and wind up getting arrested and convicted. He also very credibly was accused of trying to organize the murder of some of his opponents on this site. This is a guy who gets a pardon. Why? Because the crypto community wanted it from Trump. And I think this gets to a little bit about what the narrative, when we're starting to build, we're doing this brick by brick, right? You got to think about it like there's no election tomorrow, right? Unfortunately. So the question is, how do we assemble a case against Trump along the way? And how do we as we'll go along, I think it's important to decide what it is where you either in certain cases might even want to agree with something Trump does or ignore it, versus what do you want to use the limited time and resources you have to push back and or file it away for the narrative you want to build. And I think the combination of a lot of this stuff is that I think there's a very good chance that over the next few years, the country becomes so lawless and corrupt that it even becomes an electoral issue. Now, a lot of things have to happen that would be very bad and unfortunate that we should not root for that to seep into the bloodstream of the public in a way where that they would vote on it. But Trump is, ready off the bat. Obviously, he ran in ways that made this more likely, but he off the bat is already signaling that this is going to be the most corrupt administration we've ever seen, and is not even hiding it. And I think these are the moments where we need to be like, all right, like this is the kind of stuff we should be pointing out to the American public.
Yeah. He, within minutes of each other, which bringing us to another executive order here, within minutes of each other, he pardoned 1,500 domestic terrorists who brought violence to the Capitol and tried to upend American democracy. And then he suspended the entire U.S. refugee program, including canceling the flights of 1,600 Afghan allies who are fully vetted refugees ready to come to the United States, who, if they stay in Afghanistan, they and their families are in grave danger. These are people who literally stood up and fought alongside Americans against terrorism, risked their life to do so. So in the space of a few minutes, his priorities were so clear that he said, we're going to let all of these domestic terrorists out of jail, and we are going to leave, possibly for dead, these people who fought for America against terrorism. That's a pretty stark contrast.
Yeah, and I think it's worth, and I like that framing of it, and it's really sad. It's important to mention, you know, all these people are talking about they serve their time, yada yada, and like obviously contradictions aside, and like there's a very narrow view of who deserves that kind of treatment. But you know, QAnon shaman, who I think we all can picture at this point, this is what he had to say upon receiving a pardon. He says, "I got a pardon, baby. Now I'm gonna go buy some mother effing guns." So he sounds really contrite.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. This included everybody, included people who had perpetrated violence, included people who organized and coordinated the violence. It's as far as you could possibly go. It's as extreme as you could go.
Well, let's take a short break, and then when we come back, I want to go through a bunch of these other executive orders, really zeroing in on the question of immigration, and because there's a lot happening on immigration. Obviously, the refugee question is part of the immigration story, but there is a lot more that happened here. And then we'll have a lot more to talk about when we get back. Are you ready to jumpstart your health in 2025? Lumen can help. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. And then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. And you can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals, so you know exactly what's going on with your body in real time. And Lumen will give you tips to keep you on top of your health game. Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food you eat into fuel that keeps you going. And because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, better sleep. And Lumen gives you recommendations to improve your metabolic health. So take the next step to improving your health and go to lumen.me/majority to get 20% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/majority for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring today's episode. When your car breaks down, you take it to a mechanic with no hesitation. You need it, and it's not something most guys can fix themselves. And men should think the exact same way about ED, but the reality is that you might be hesitant to seek help. Thankfully, through HIMS, you get access to personalized ED treatment without stepping outside your door. And HIMS is changing men's healthcare, providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. And HIMS provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints and Viagra and Cialis, and their generics are up to 95% cheaper. And the process is 100% online, so there's no need for the uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option, and if prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. And with hundreds of trusted subscribers, HIMS can help you find the ED option that works for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/majority. That's HIMS.com/majority for your personalized ED treatment options. HIMS.com/majority. The products mentioned are chewable compounded products which are not approved or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See the website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Well, obviously, Trump did a lot more over the past few days. Within hours of inauguration, he had rescinded 78 of Biden's executive actions and signed dozens of orders, memorandums, proclamations of his own. None of that is super surprising because obviously, Biden coming in did a lot of that to Trump. This is where we are today. But I think the details here are really important. A lot of what Trump did had to do with immigration. He switched off the CBP One app, which migrants use to book appointments for asylum. He basically blocked asylum and sealed the border. He's ordered troops to the border to seal off the border. He's tried to unlock funds to build that wall. He looks like he wants to use the military, potentially in violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, to round up immigrants within this country. The Justice Department just issued an order today saying that they will investigate and prosecute, including local law enforcement officials in cities and states if they refuse to enforce the Trump administration's new policies. We'll get to some other stuff, including on birthright. But this is pretty sweeping, Jason. I would say that none of this is surprising. And that doesn't mean it's not worth talking about. But this is what he ran on, unfortunately. And, to my frustration, the American public saw this and enough of them pulled the lever for him.
Yeah, a lot of this is what he ran on. The refugees thing, he did not run on. And I know because I'm involved at the highest levels with the Afghan evac world and with the entire world, which is a bipartisan community of people who care about getting Afghan allies here, who are in Afghanistan, who are in hiding, and making sure that they can be here. And his people gave a lot of lip service to it. I mean, they, what's his name? Waltz, I think it's Waltz, the new national security advisor who left his congressional seat, was a huge critic of the Biden administration for not getting enough refugees out, in his words, and is a huge supporter of the Afghan evac coalition. So, I mean, they made a lot of signals that they weren't going to do this kind of thing. And then he issued an executive order saying that all flights for refugees to come here, and these are people who are fully vetted, people who can't go back to their country or can't stay in their country without being in immense danger for them and their families. And the executive order said those flights all stop on the 27th, which by itself is bad enough to stop all refugee opportunities to come to this country. But then the State Department didn't wait for the 27th. The State Department just canceled all flights. So there's over 1,600 Afghan allies, including 200 of which at least are the family members of American service members and Afghan allies themselves, people who served with and for the U.S. military over there and are family members of American soldiers who have more than likely exposed themselves by coming out of hiding in order to prepare to get on these fights, who have been left hanging. And it's just disgusting. And if you look at the polling, 89% of Americans believe that the program should continue to bring Afghan allies here who are in danger for their relationship to us, including 87% of Republicans and 92% of Democrats. So that's one where it is a big surprise, and I hope that we're going to push hard on all of our elected officials to make sure that this gets undone, because it can be undone.
Yeah, and it's important to make a distinction between the sort of broad strokes asylum actions that he's taken and the refugee question. There is overlap between the two, but in some ways they're distinct questions, and I think one is a lot more popular than the other. The refugee stuff you're talking about is way more popular than the general asylum claims, in part because, as we've covered on this podcast before, the asylum process is completely broken, right? Refugee resettlement is not broken. In many ways, it needs to be turned up.
Right.
But asylum is being and I think we've talked about this a few times. Basically, everybody claims asylum who comes across the border. The system is overwhelmed. The bipartisan border deal attempted to fix this. Trump tanked that. I think everybody's familiar with this at this point. It doesn't surprise me the least that Trump would take actions to shut down this program. A lot of people who deserve asylum are not going to get it because of this. At the same time, a lot of people who abuse the system will not be able to abuse it anymore. And I think on balance, you look at the polling on this, you look in the mirror and take an honest read of this election. I think that particular part of this is not going to cost Trump at all in the short term. I think and just to give people a sense of this, there's a Gallup poll that, basically been asking people since 1970, in your view, should immigration be kept at its present level, increased or decreased? And what you will see starting over the past few years is that the numbers have completely flipped. It used to be that increase was starting to beat out decreased. And now that number has shot up where 55% of people say now immigration should be decreased. And it looks like a number that's continuing to grow. Like it's exponential growth over the past few years. The translation, Trump has been winning that narrative. And I think we need to ask ourselves why. And I think on a substantive level, a lot of Americans feel like the system's out of control, and they're right. Democrats, again, tried to solve this. Biden tried to solve this in the end with the bipartisan border deal. I personally don't think they did it aggressively enough early, but in good faith, they tried to solve it. But it has been out of control. Trump will get credit short term for some of these actions. I do think he is already overstepping on this front. We could treat the asylum situation for what it is. If he had shut it down, he was like, well, now let's rebuild it. Let's pass a bill. Let's get the courts right. All that. That's one thing. I think he's going to permanently keep this thing shut, which I think is going to create all kinds of problems. He's also, as I alluded to, signaling that there are going to be pretty aggressive, potentially illegal actions. And what I mean by illegal is this Posse Comitatus Act, which if you're West Wing fans out there, you'll know is it's illegal to use. You might know the exact sort of framing of the.
I think can't use the United States military. Can't use the United States military against American citizens domestically.
Yeah, and part of what I'm talking about here is like if these people are coming in and they are, as there's some evidence we could talk about why we have reason to believe this. It's going to be pretty shoddy work, and that certain people are going to be deported who have valid claims to be here, which I think also gets to the Lake and Riley Act and some of the problems with that, which we haven't talked about on this podcast, which some Democrats supported. There's not a lot of due process here. There isn't any due process for the people who are being deported in a lot of situations here. And I'm already hearing from people that people are starting to get that knock on their door across this country right now. And the question is, if they are as aggressive as it seems like they might be in using all kinds of, military, threatening local law enforcement, and deporting everybody from your nanny to service workers to potentially your doctors in this country, the meatpacking plants, construction workers, these are industries dominated by undocumented immigrants. A lot of people that personally and that even your Trump voting friends know personally are going to be sent out of this country in really inhumane ways without any sense of due process. Some of them are just going to disappear overnight. And from a self-interested perspective, all the things that you count on being cheap, whether it's the meat that you eat, the vegetables that you eat, the housing construction, the nanny, the domestic care workers, all the way up to some of the white collar jobs that we don't talk about that immigrants do. All that stuff is going to get more expensive. And so you take the moral case against this with the self-interested case, that's where Trump will get in trouble. He doesn't have to do it that way. Like there is a way more aggressive version of this that's way more aggressive than Biden that he will get credit for. I'm already starting to see him overstep here, though.
And it's going to probably be really messy. I mean, they're talking about doing raids into places that they refer to as sanctuary cities, Chicago, San Diego, places like that. And they're talking about going in with not just DHS, but, using the military to support it. And look, there are going to be protests of that sort of thing. There are going to be crowds that don't want that to happen. And look, the United States military is the most professional, most impressive, most highly trained military in the history of the world, but that's not what they're trained to do. And if you take, an E4, E5 soldier and you tell them that they're supposed to go into a situation like that, a dynamic situation, and they're supposed to seize migrants and pull them out, and if they're armed, bad things are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen to the soldier. Bad things are going to happen to bystanders. Bad things are going to happen to migrants. And there is a scenario, sadly, in which this is not dissimilar to, the aftermath of the bus boycotts during the civil rights movement, that when people actually see it play out, it becomes real. And so there's a huge recipe for a real mess and a real human tragedy and disaster to happen here.
I think it's important in this next phase of the Democratic Party for us to make a persuasive case for immigration. Like, I think this is going to be absolutely critical. Like, there are going to be a couple of levels at which the Trump administration and Vance, who, obviously will be the front runner to grab the baton from Trump, are going to overstep. There are going to be many different ways they do it, but you can only plan for what you could predict at this point. And one thing we know for sure is there is going to be a contrast on this question. And we have to learn from the past and say, all right, the 2019 era politics that got a lot of Democrats in trouble, including Harris, by the way we were talking about immigration, which some people accuse us of being relatively open border. I do not want to reopen that debate. It's not relevant at this point anymore because we're far from that. What we can say is, well, what is the Democratic position on immigration today, right? And I think it is we need a legal process. We need an orderly process. We need a safe process, but that process needs to yield a lot more people in this country. Like, we need to make the case for more people in this country. And I think that's how we need to talk about this, is to say, yes, like, let's add more judges. Let's add more officers. I'm not too worried about military at the border. Like, if you're going to the border as the military, sure, that's where the military should be. Like, that's fine. We say it's military, it's police, it's ICE. Like, that's not our fight. A wall, right? Last time we were so obsessed with the wall. The wall is nowhere near our priority right now if we've got law enforcement coerced in cities and states and the military coerced and being coerced or pushed to arrest people without any due process who are, tax-paying members of your community who you know and love, right? That's what our focus needs to be, not the symbolism of this, not every little aspect of this plan. We need to focus on the refugees, for example. We need to focus on the most problematic parts of this. And then we also need to signal that we want an orderly legal process and that we will advocate for that and abandon, I think, some of those earlier sort of more sweeping, I would say, reactionary politics of immigration.
Well, we have to understand what it is that we own. Like, what are the issues that we own? We've talked before on the show about how one of the issues we own is government, is that we are the party of government. They are the party of saying government doesn't work, government is bad, although they're increasingly becoming authoritarian while still saying that government doesn't work and only the private sector can do things. But we are the party that believes government can do good things. And so we have gotten better and better over the last few years at owning that and saying, like, yeah, we believe that government can be a force for good, and here's how. But we also are now the party that owns immigration. We are the party that believes that there should be some immigration, and frankly, that there should be more legal immigration into the country. So I agree with you. You got to recognize the things that you own. We recognized a few years ago that we are the party that fully owns the abortion issue. And at least for one election, not for two, but for one election, that was helpful because we owned up to it and made our case. And yeah, I agree. When there are issues that you're going to own one way or the other, you ought to get busy persuading people that you're right, instead of just trying to shame them into, shame them away from opposing you. That doesn't work.
Yeah, and I do think there's a part of this. It's a little different than abortion because on abortion, we had the public every step of the way. Right. It just got more pronounced.
But we went for years like dancing around that issue and not wanting to talk about it, is what I mean.
For sure. But I think, like, here, obviously, we're underwater to start. But yeah. I do think the dynamic that could play out here, it's not a guarantee. I don't want to, this is not a full-blown prediction, but I think there's a strong likelihood that this would be the case, is that once this actually becomes an owned policy, the way that the Republicans had to own their abortion policies, the public turns against them on it. And that's where I think we need to pay attention and be ready for that moment. Now, one other issue that we've been talking, and obviously it has inflationary effects. Another issue that has inflationary effects is the tariff question. Trump has kind of flirted now with tariffs. He's threatened all kinds of tariffs for Mexico, Canada, China. I don't think we need to go through the finer points here, other than to say that he's pushing back the dates, saying, we're going to do some studies, we're going to consider this or that. I don't have the first instinct about whether he's actually going to follow through with this. I don't know. Do you?
I don't. Although he has to do something. Like you can't study, and then do no tariffs. So he's going to do some. First of all, I think the guy really believes in them. I mean, I think he actually thinks that they're going to work, and he actually believes that they are this is how he talks about it. He believes that he can avoid putting taxes on Americans if he pays for things with tariffs. Not understanding that if it is taxing in your life, it doesn't really matter who you pay the tax to. If the prices go up on something, that is taxing. It just like with healthcare. Like, yes, we don't have universal socialized medicine in this country, so we don't pay higher taxes to pay for that. But we do, as a result of not having a vibrant public option, or a true one in the country, are taxed in the sense that we have higher healthcare costs.
Yeah, I am genuinely trying to keep an open mind about where this goes. And what I mean by this is both in terms of whether he does them, but what the effect of it would be. And I think I kind of separate out the Mexico-Canada tariffs, which I treat a little differently than China. The Mexico-Canada tariffs, I'm very skeptical of. I've talked about it here before. Although, again, as we've talked about, like reinstating tariffs on Mexico and Canada could be framed as kind of walking away from NAFTA, which actually a lot of people on the left have called on us to do. It's just another way of framing it, right? And like he's going to do it in his own Trumpian way. But again, like I don't think there's anything like there's nothing clean about this debate around that particular side of things. I am not for it, but I don't think it breaks down as neatly as some people suggest it would. The China side of things, China is a authoritarian country that commits all kinds of crazy human rights abuses and engages in all kinds of anti-competitive behavior. Our audience is going to hate this, but the leverage that Trump has in even threatening this, if you follow the statements from China, like this is where we need to be careful, because the promise of Trump that he is trying to put out there is this muscular, I'm tough and all this kind of stuff. And we roll our eyes at that. And I think at the past administration, we were like, oh, he's not going to build the wall. He didn't build the wall. He promised this, he promised that, he didn't do it. Well, I think there's some reason to believe that he's going to do a lot more stuff in this administration that we like and don't like. And the end result of that will be that the perception of him domestically and abroad is that he's a tough guy. And people are going to hate this, but this is the law of the jungle. These are evil, terrible actors in many cases, China being near the top of the list, who is you can call them an adversary, an enemy, whatever. I'm reading their statements carefully, and if I'm calling balls and strikes, he's got leverage. And I just want to, I have to say it, and if you were smart about it, which he's Trump and he will probably do reckless, crazy things with it, but he certainly has leverage right now. And I don't have a strong prediction about where that particular side of things is going.
He has you're right. I mean, he has leverage the same way a hostage taker has leverage at the beginning of a hostage crisis. But most hostage crises don't end with you getting the plane that you asked for and all the money put into a Swiss bank account, right? So that's the problem is Yes, like it's sort of like Michael Scott Paper Company for people who watch The Office. It's like you can jack all your prices way down and you can take a bunch of business, but at some point you've got to sustain the situation. And so that's the problem, right? Is what is the exit from this? You have threatened these massive tariffs. And yeah, when you make these massive threats of tariffs, people are gonna come to the table and they're gonna want to work with you. But then what do you do with that?
Yeah.
And look, the likelihood that he follows through on something catastrophic like that is certainly higher, given that he's in his second term. And I know that there's lots of people who say, "Oh, he's going to try to run again." Look, I'm not saying it's impossible that he'll try to run again. It's just not what I see happening. I mean, as a sidebar, the guy did this mostly to avoid prison and to, get retribution, and he's going to achieve both those things. And then he's going to be in his 80s, and he's not going to have a lot of incentive to try to hang on unconstitutionally. So I don't really listen to that stuff, which means he's a lame duck president who can threaten all sorts of things and do all sorts of things, and he will. But he's at his highest leveraged point right now.
Yeah.
And what he does with that is the question. And you're right. If history is any guide, he's not exactly going to handle that with the most deft of care.
Right. Well, and here's a thought experiment. Let's pretend that Joe Biden threatened to put tariffs on China, and the vice premier of China, when asked about it, said that the country was working hard not to have a trade surplus, and that they were really interested in opening up negotiations. So you would say, "Oh, Biden, you got his mojo. Like he scared them, right?" That's exactly what happened here, right? So that's all we know right now about what's going on here. And through all the muck and the crazy and the shit that Trump does and all the entanglements and the corruption and all this kind of stuff stipulated on this podcast. But I think people need to be prepared for this narrative out there that Trump is working really hard to sow. And again, we just talked about immigration. We lose these narratives like a lot. Like we don't lose all of them, but we've lost some really important ones. We need to be prepared for the possibility that 6 months from now, a year from now, maybe even heading into the midterm elections, the narrative is beta Democrats, alpha Trump Republicans, they do shit. Even if I don't like it all, you're going to hear this at your table. You probably hear it now. I might not like everything Trump is doing, but he's tough. He's assertive, yada, yada, yada. And I think you need to be clear-eyed about this, everybody out there. Like, because I'm seeing it, right? Like, I don't want to see it, but it's like that narrative is very, very potent right now. And they have a much bigger megaphone than we have right now. And they have all the power in order to push that narrative. And we have almost none.
So if you're listening to this and you're thinking about how you're going to have those conversations with the people in your life, what you have to do is you have to step back and you have to ask yourself, what do I actually believe about this stuff? Because what won't work is just talking about how immoral the guy is and all that. Like, we know that. We know this, man. Like, and a lot of the people you're going to talk to who voted for him will know this. You can express that if you want, and I'm not saying like ignore it or cave. What I'm saying is you got to ask yourself, do you think immigration is good or bad? If you think immigration is good for this country, don't allow yourself to get into, a thing about like, well, this bill would have done this and Trump killed it and now he's doing this and this asylum thing or whatever. You say, here's the kind of immigration that I think is good. And this is what we should do. You don't have to be wed to what the Democrats have or have not proposed in the past. You are a Democrat and you can tell somebody what you think would be good. And therefore, in that conversation, that's what the Democrats are for. Figure out what you think makes sense and make an argument for it. And this goes for if you are, sitting around with your family at dinner or at work in the break room, people are talking about, or if you're a United States effing senator, figure out what you think makes sense and make the argument for it, because that will be the thing that Democrats are for, and do it unapologetically. And I think what we believe is that the way our economy is built, more immigration, we want it to be orderly, we want it to be legal, we want it to work, but more immigration is actually good for our economy. Not just a cookie cutter, slamming the door shut approach that they're taking.
Well, on that note, we're going to take another break. When we come back, we are going to debate and discuss the question that I think is on a lot of people's minds right now, which is Trump solidifying a majority for the GOP? Is he winning hearts and minds, or is he squandering the opportunity? When we come back, we'll answer that question. The holiday season may have messed up your routine, and you may want to take charge of your life with full mental clarity for the new year. You might even be embracing Sober January like I've been doing, and you can also embrace CBD Awareness Month with VIA to experience the powerful benefits of hemp without the high. It's trusted by over 500,000 happy customers. VIA is the Swiss Army knife of wellness. It's dedicated to harnessing the natural benefits of hemp to create high-quality wellness products, and VIA's collection of THC-free products combines minor cannabinoids like CBD, CBG, CBN with botanical supplements for targeted effects you can actually feel. Whether you're looking to improve your sleep, focus, or relief, VIA has something for you. VIA is also well renowned for their award-winning THC and THC-free gummies and vapes, THCA flower, soothing tropicals, calming drops, all crafted with the highest quality hemp sourced from trusted, independently owned American farms. And the best part is that VIA legally ships to nearly all states in the U.S. in discreet packaging directly to your door with a worry-free guarantee, no medical card required. So if you're 21 plus, check out the link at VIA's website, link in our description, and use the code MAJORITY for 15% off. And if you're new to VIA, you get a free gift of your choice. And if you're 21 plus, again, check out the link to VIA in our description and use the code MAJORITY to receive 15% off. And if you're new to VIA, you get a free gift of your choice. After you purchase, they ask you where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you this year. Enhance your everyday with VIA.
Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids should never eat. That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin. While most children's vitamins are filled with 5 grams of sugar and can contribute to a variety of health issues, Hiya is made with 0 sugar and 0 gummy junk, yet it tastes great and it's perfect for picky eaters, i.e. kids. Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste that they love. Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more. It's non-GMO, vegan, dairy-free, allergy-free, gelatin-free, nut-free, and everything else that you can imagine. Hiya is designed for kids of all ages and sent straight to your door so parents have one less thing to worry about. As you know, I'm a father and I'm always on the lookout for the best possible vitamins for my child to take. I'm so happy that I've come across Hiya Health. The ingredients are amazing and I don't have to worry about sugar or gummy junk because Hiya Health is made without that stuff and is still able to keep the great taste, which is super important because that's how you get kids to eat it. We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/majority. This deal is not available on the regular website. Go to hiyahealth.com/majority and get your kids the full body nourishment that they need to grow into healthy adults.
You all know how important sleep is to me. That's why I'm obsessed with my Helix mattress. When I'm traveling like I am right now, I sorely miss it. And with everything you got going on in your life, whether it's demanding social schedules, work, kids, whatever, you know a great night's sleep is really important. And Helix offers 20 unique mattresses, including the award-winning Luxe Collection, the newly released Helix Elite Collection, a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and even a mattress made just for kids. So how will you know which mattress is right for you? Well, you could take the Helix Sleep Quiz and find your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes, and your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door free of charge. I took the Helix sleep quiz and they got me the Luxe mattress. I love it. And you know what? You can get a mattress that's right for you, and you could test it out by sleeping on it in your own home. And they offer a 100-night trial and a 10 to 15-year warranty to try out your new Helix mattress. Helix has also been awarded the #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine. It's even recommended by multiple leading chiropractors and doctors of sleep medicine as a go-to solution for improving your sleep. Helix is offering 20% off site-wide and 2 free dream pillows with mattress purchase if you go to helixsleep.com/majority. That's helixsleep.com/majority. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. So I would say the most unexpected thing to happen over the past few days is Trump's initial statements. And I don't want to overstate them. There's not much yet to say that he's going to follow through on this. But Trump threatened to impose new sanctions and tariffs on Russia if they didn't negotiate an end to the war in Ukraine. Trump said, if we don't make a deal and soon, I have no other choice but to put levels of taxes, tariffs, and sanctions on anything being sold by Russia to the United States and various other participating countries. I have a theory here, and this is just a theory, which is, let's pretend for a second that the most extreme example of leverage that Russia has on Trump is true. P-tape, right? Let's just say that's true. Now Trump is in his second term. What does it matter? Like, if there is such leverage, and I have no idea whether there is, and I generally need to see stuff before I need to know it. There's a lot of suspicious stuff that Trump has said about Russia. There's a smaller version of it, which he just felt like Russia wanted him to win. And so he was cool with them. There is a possibility out here, and we have no idea to know, whether he treats Russia the way he treats everybody else who's under him, which is like Bannon and fucking Scaramucci and all these people who are in. Sometimes they're out, but Trump likes to assert dominance, right? And there's a part of me that's wondering, hoping, I guess, is he thinking of Russia now where he's like, you know what? I don't need you anymore. Like, I'm dominant. He's probably reading all the same stuff we do, which is that the U.S. has survived this mini recession, whatever you want to call the past 5 years, inflationary period, better than any other country in the world. It has a lot of assets, no matter how much he was ripping and crapping on the U.S. during the election. He's like, okay, this is my country now. I'm the biggest guy on the block, and I'm going to assert my dominance. I think that's a possibility. It might not be the most likely thing that's going on here. And obviously what it means to negotiate a truce could be really bad for Ukraine. But my spidey sense tells me that Trump is feeling himself right now on some of this stuff, and that I can't say that I have a full sense of what's about to come next in terms of his relationship with some of these adversaries.
So that would be lovely if that were the case. And I'm not going to say it's a 0% chance. I think what's going on is, I mean, look, the guy's definitely feeling himself. There's no question about it. But I think it is probably more likely that he has a few things happening at once. One, he's trying to get some stuff through Congress, and he has a still decently sized block of Republicans, particularly in the Senate, who are very pro-Ukraine and very anti-Putin. He also has a new Secretary of State that has not exactly been, I mean, Rubio, for all of his faults, has not been like an apologist for Putin necessarily. I mean, he's over the years, he's gotten increasingly less aggressive toward him, but he is still like a Cuban-American senator from Florida who's going to have a somewhat predictable standpoint toward the former Soviet Union, right? So he's got all these things he's trying to balance. And at the same time, he believes, because he's feeling himself, that he can bring Ukraine to the peace table. That's what he believes. And then there's one other element that I'm sure he's been briefed on, because it's also open source. It's been everywhere. And that is that despite our best efforts, the sanctions against Russia haven't been anywhere near as effective as we hoped. And Putin has pretty well shrugged them off and been like, hey, nice try. We don't really care, right? They've gone and strengthened their economic alliances with China. They've brought North Korean soldiers in to fight in Ukraine, doing that kind of stuff. So yeah. I think that what all that mixes into for Trump is he's going, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to convince Ukraine that they can't win. And I'm going to convince Putin to take a win. And so he doesn't see it as like, he is not on the same page with us about the Ukraine-Russian war. His page is, let's end the war. I don't care how. He doesn't care. He does not care if it ends up with Russia gets all of Ukraine and it becomes part of Russia again. And he doesn't honestly really care if Ukraine even gets to keep the part of Russia that they've moved some people into and have attacked. He doesn't care about that. What he cares about is being able to say he ended the war, right? And so for him, it's no big deal to throw out as a means of creating some sort of credibility towards some sort of unbiased nature that, if they don't do it, we'll have to sanction them. But in his mind, what he's thinking is, I would put on sanctions that Putin wouldn't really care about. And it would be because they didn't take a great deal that I would have put in there for them after Ukraine basically surrendered is what I think he's thinking. So, but if I'm wrong and you're right, that would be lovely. But I think
I actually think you're more likely to be right. And let me refine a little bit what I'm saying, which is I think this is possible. I think it's possible that there's a little something.
A non-zero chance that he's like,
there's a little bit more.
I don't need y'all now.
Yeah, and here's what I would watch if I were trying to verify the veracity of what I'm saying. First of all, I think it is absolutely true that getting any deal, Trump would view as a huge win because this is what he has promised. And
he can't find Ukraine on a map. He doesn't care
right.
which parts of it get taken.
But here's what he's entered, and that I think if he's really smart, right? Like let's pretend, let's assume the most capable version of this guy, right? Which is if you're watching Russia relies on a few key people to keep itself from something near economic collapse. India and a few other countries, right? Hungary, you can go through it, some Middle Eastern countries, etc. That's why I think you should watch India, because India buys a lot of their exports that the U.S. has sanctioned. Basically, it's like a roundabout way. Mm-hmm. And if Trump is smart, first of all, I was India. Trump is very popular in India, and obviously there's a lot of similarities between Modi and Trump.
And they're aligned, right? I mean,
100%.
Yeah.
U.S. has more leverage over India, by the way, and also these tech companies that Trump is very close with have a lot of leverage over India and vice versa. Trump is more threatening to Russia than any Democratic president has ever been at this moment, because the Democrats have already done all the things that we can do. Now, the question is, Trump could roll those things back. There's a lot of evidence that he could, so he could be weaker on Russia than anybody, but he could go in the other direction, right? Which is, I can keep those things that the Democrats have done. And I am way closer with Modi and Orban and all these other people that you depend on than any Democrat would be. And in that way, I'm just watching it. I think you're right. I think the simple story here is right. But there's just a couple of things where I'm just like, this just feels a little different than I would have expected it today. And the proof is in the pudding. He could just wind up, as we speak, could be rolling this back.
The opportunity for a Nixon goes to China thing exists, obviously. The problem is that it requires a real attention span to rebuild a coalition and to pull members to supportive nations of Russia out from that coalition and bring it into a new one of your own. You have to travel to those places. You have to spend real time on it. You can't staff it out. You have to do it yourself. And I just, even if he were dispossessed of whatever garbage is in there now and a new human soul were to be put in there, I just don't see that human soul being attached to an attention span to get it done.
Yeah. I think it was Andrew Ross Sorkin said this the other day, which was, he said the bond market is the only check on Trump. And what he was trying to say was the economy, in a sense, is the only check on Trump. And I think this is a good theory, because in a world where the economy is doing well, Trump can do all kinds of stuff. He really, at this point, second term, pardon himself, he could do anything, right? Congress, obviously, we just saw it. He pardoned the people who attacked them, right? There's very little stopping him domestically. Tech companies, Supreme Court, all this kind of stuff. I think he's at the point now where he looks in the mirror and he's like, anybody who tells me what to do or tries to assert dominance over me is my threat at this point. But the minute the economy becomes an issue and he needs people, his behavior will change pretty dramatically, right? When, saber rattling with China Canada, Mexico, the immigration stuff, the tariff stuff, where he needs like Democratic support in order to pass bills over Republican opposition to do stimulus, et cetera, that's when his behavior will change. And I think that is very likely to happen. The question is what happens in the interim right now. And this is where I think, and maybe we'll table for next week the question of what's popular and not, and end with this question, which is one that I know is very much on your mind, which is how do you handle this period of time? And obviously, if you're listening, listeners, you can tell how I'm doing it, and you may think I'm crazy for even trying to see any silver lining in anything. But part of what I'm trying to do is genuinely say, all right, I baked in Trump. Like we can't turn back time to the election. So the question is like, obviously not 100% of things Trump does are evil, right? I just personally think that's not possible, right? So the question is like, can
all his motivations could be.
Yeah, totally.
All his
100%.
motivations could be, but your point is that the end result is not always the case. Like
we can't change his motivation. We can't change the fact that he's elected. All we could do is control what's between our ears and try to maintain a semblance of objectivity about things that deserve objectivity. And that's what I'm trying to do. Right. And like, and I actually think that makes for a more effective resistance, is saying, look, like there are certain things that are more important for us to elevate than others. And then there are certain things that you shouldn't, like, if you don't think it's a bad policy, you shouldn't feel the need to say it's a bad policy because Trump is doing it for bad reasons. Right. If that makes any sense.
No. Remaining objective is incredibly important in terms of credibility. If you want to maintain your credibility, you have to maintain your objectivity. It is very difficult to maintain objectivity right now. I, for one, am very angry. And what troubles me and the emotional place that I have to work through during a time like this is this question of, is this who we are now? And that's what I've been trying to answer for people on social media the last week or so. And the answer for me is no, that this may be what our country is doing at the moment. It doesn't mean that's who we are. And now people will say, and I've had them say it to me on social media, like, look at our history, look at the terrible things that we've done as a country. This is who we are. Look at the fact that he was voted in. Okay, sure. But the thing about America is that who we are has always been more about who we're trying to be than what we do at that moment. Because if you look at the scope of our history, we have, with frequent steps backwards, but always generally inertia going forward with moments of backwardness, we're always trying to be better. And so the question is, are we still trying to be better? Is our leader trying to be better right now? No, he's not. He's not trying to be what I would consider better. But that doesn't become a reflection on us as a people. It doesn't have to, because what I keep coming back to is that he doesn't get to say what America is. There's no conclusion to that, right? It goes on and on as long as America exists. And that means that it always makes sense for us to fight to make America what we want it to be. And that's why I stay engaged. And it's why I feel like, this is a period that is making me extremely angry and that is hurting a lot of people, but I will persist through it, because in 2 years, less than 2 years, we will have an election. And then 2 years after that, we will have a presidential election. And those are our opportunities to, again, sort of retake the test. And that's what I look toward.
Yeah. And I think like the battle is now about what's ahead of us, right? Skating where the puck is going. And you think about how Trump ran against the Republican Party. And, although he criticized Obama was popular every step of the way during that period of time and continues to be. So what Trump did was he didn't have to win the battle over whether Obama was a good president or not. Right. So I think like
good point.
This is part of what I think is going on with Trump, is like, we are so used to a certain kind of conversation around Trump. And a lot of it is important because we need to stop certain things that he does. But again, like, there's no election in front of us right now, tomorrow. Right. So the question is like, what's the next battle to fight? And that battle is going to be in the midterm elections, in large part over some of the Trump policies, but also over a forward-looking vision for the country. And we really need to pick leaders who have that. And then we're going to have a presidential election that'll probably be J.D. Vance against whoever our best is. And that person is probably going to run against the party, the Democratic Party, right? Just like Obama ran against the party, Bill Clinton ran against the party, Trump ran against his party, right? That is how it's done, right? And you got to think ahead, like, okay, if that's what they're doing, then you can absolve yourself and, you know, relieve yourself of any baggage that you've had over the past few years, right? Like, what does it mean to be a Democrat, right? It doesn't mean spending too much time thinking about Joe Biden's record or what happened in 2019 or 2020, right? It's really thinking about the future of this country. And I think that's freeing in a certain way, right? Like all this tea leaves, is Trump mean this or that, or is he genuine on Ukraine, all that? Like, these are important questions and we've spent some time on it. But the most important question is, where's the puck going? What are the American public going to be looking for in the next couple of years? I find that energizing.
I think that's a great point. And I think that when you think about it that way, you recognize that Trump is actually opening the Republicans up to a huge vulnerability, which is what we learned in the last election. If you're going to take one lesson from it in terms of the electoral outcome, it's that it is still the case that what's going on in the economy is the largest factor in what happens in the election. And if Trump is in a situation in the midterms, or the Republicans are in a situation in the next presidential where they have not improved the economy, or in fact, more than likely, given the inflationary stuff they're going to do on tariffs and everything, in fact, they've probably made it worse. They've probably gotten themselves in trouble. Then you look back and you look at the fact that he had billionaires sitting in front of the cabinet closest to him at the inauguration, then that hands us an enormous opportunity because it tells the story for us. And by the way, that story has the benefit of being true, which is billionaires and powerful people are what matter to this party more than anything else. And fairly or unfairly, that's what they hung around our neck in the last one, and it worked. And I just think that they've opened themselves up to that in a major, major way by deifying billionaires. They're worshiping billionaires. And traditionally, that doesn't go over great in America or anywhere, really.
Yeah, you got to take their strength and make it a weakness, right? Like right now, like Trump has his foot on the throat of a lot of these billionaires. And honestly, like it's troubling in many different ways. And it's a true consolidation of power in this country. There's no other way to put it. He's got all branches of government and he's got all the billionaires who are afraid of him, right? And you could paint that as a strength, right? And we shouldn't kid ourselves.
Currently a strength.
Yeah, we shouldn't kid ourselves about that. But like anything else, that strength can become a weakness really fast. And that's what we need to do is take it a little jujitsu, like you're saying, make it a weakness. And I think that's the project that we have. Speaking of making strengths a weakness, we've got a game coming up. And I would say the confidence of the Chiefs / hubris, I think, is the strength of the Chiefs. Their coziness with the referees and the establishment of the
come on, stop playing
NFL.
a character. Just talk. You're so honest the whole show. You give this very objective analysis, and then you become this like Fox Sports 1 pro Bills character.
Well, okay, here's let me tell you a little something about how I spent my Sunday, which is as you know, I can't watch the Bills anymore. I care too much right now.
You're like Billy Bean with the A's.
Yes. So let me walk you through my Sunday. I watched the first play of the game, and we had stuffed a Derrick Henry run, and I was like, I just want this to be my memory for the next 3 hours of what this game is. So I went to an hour and a half sound bath and left my phone at home because I couldn't watch anymore. And I stayed at the place where there was a sound bath a little extra because I tried to time it so that when I came back, I would know the outcome of the game. And the funny thing is, at the end of the sound bath, the woman who runs it says, you know, just listen to your body. Where does your body want to be? And I said to myself, my body wants to be in front of this game, wherever's happening in the game. So I go home and I'm like, okay, I'm opening my phone and I'm going to know the outcome of this game. And I just have a bunch. I look first at my text messages and it's like lots of like, yeah, yada, yada. And then it's like a lot of negativity. I'm like, oh my God, we lost this game. I pull it up. It's the beginning of the fourth quarter and the Bills are up 5. So I mistimed everything. The Bills are up 5. And I'm like, well, that's better than I expected. But apparently we had a bad third quarter. So I was like, it's like all about expectations, which validates why I wasn't watching the game in the first place. I missed all of that ups and downs. But I'm like, okay, I don't want to watch this anymore. So I turn on Netflix and watch American Primeval, which shows you a little bit about how, like, in order to not watch the Bills, I watched a show basically about a bunch of people killing each other in Utah. And I said, all right, I'm going to watch 20 minutes of this show.
I've heard that show is good. It's a new
Very
Pete
good
Berg thing, right? Yeah.
Very good. I'm going to watch 20 minutes of the show. And by that point, this game will be over. I lasted all of a couple of minutes, but I'm so crazy that I couldn't watch the actual game. I just was monitoring my text messages because I couldn't really watch the actual game. I just wanted to discern through my text messages what was happening in the game. The problem is when things are going bad, people don't text me at all. So I got a bunch of just silence at this point, and I was like, oh my God, we lost the game. So finally I turned it on just as the Ravens are marching down the field in the final minute of the game. They score a touchdown. They're down 2 points. They need to get the 2-point conversion. Mark Andrews, the tight end, drops the ball. We recover the onside kick and win the game. That's how I watched the Bills game. I'm a total lunatic.
You are a total lunatic. I think I told you before we started recording that Diana asked, because, for those not listening, or for those listening and don't know, Chiefs Bills playing in the AFC Championship this weekend. They met in the playoffs. Was it 2 years ago? And you came to Kansas City for the game, and we went, and it was an incredible game that the Bills lost in devastating fashion. And I said, no, Ravi's not coming. And she was like, why not? And I said, because I don't think Ravi can handle it. Like, even if they win, even if his team wins, I don't think he'll enjoy it at all. And
yeah.
Well, here's how we're feeling about it here. You would think that we might be like, oh, look, we've won the last 2 Super Bowls. We've won, 3 of the last, 4 Super Bowls, or 3, after a while you lose track,
Yeah, stuff out there, yeah.
You'd think that we'd be like, whatever. Like, we want to win, but it's okay if we don't. But the thing is winning the Super Bowl this year would mean a three-peat, which no one has ever done. And we want that very badly in Kansas City. So this feels almost like we haven't won a Super Bowl, because what we want more than anything is to be, declared the greatest team in history, to have won 3 straight Super Bowls. So I think there's a lot of nerves in town. I'm nervous about the game. The Bills are, we lost the last game of the season because we benched all our starters and everything. So really, the Bills are the only team that beat us this year. And we don't match up well against the Bills. Like, I absolutely can see this game going in a way where every time we think we have a stop, Josh Allen picks up another 12 yards, and he has just an incredible game. So we're very nervous about it. I think we will win because we're the Chiefs, and that's just what the Chiefs tend to do. But it's going to be a heck of a game. What I will say is that if and this is, I don't know how people feel about this around here, but if we do lose the game, I will be cheering for the Bills in the Super Bowl. Like, I and not just because of our friendship, but just because, like, I feel terrible for Bills fans, and also because, like, the Lions were eliminated. The Commanders, that's kind of interesting. Daniels is interesting, but, like, the Bills would be the story. And also because, frankly, as a Chiefs fan, I don't want the Bills to come back. If they do beat us, I don't want them to come back still super hungry next year.
Yeah.
I want them to win their Super Bowl and move on so we can get back to winning Super Bowls if they do beat us. But I do think that the winner of this game more than likely will win the Super Bowl.
Yeah, it's so hard. I mean, I'm trying not to think about too much. Like, it's a surreal year because people weren't even predicting us to win our division. We had $62 million in dead cap. We lost Stephon Diggs, Gabe Davis, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde. I mean, the whole team basically, basically most of our captains were gone. People just thought this was going to be a down year, and it's the best season. Basically, if it's the best we've looked, basically this is our best chance of beating you guys, even better than the 13-second game in terms of coming into the game. This is the team I'm most confident in. But it's football. Anything can happen. And what's crazy is we beat the Lions, the first seed in the NFC. We beat you guys, the first seed in the AFC. We beat the Ravens, who I still think is the best team in football. And I think that game's played 10 times. They're beating us more than we're beating them. You talk about what's a good matchup. That's a bad matchup for us. Like, that's a big team.
Derrick Henry's a bad matchup for anybody. especially. With
Yeah, their defense is really good. Their running game is really good. And Lamar Jackson, because of his dual threat combined with Henry and the way that Lamar Jackson was passing, you saw that in the second half. I didn't see it. You saw it. What is like really dangerous when
I felt
he's on his
terrible
game.
for Mark Andrews, by the way. Like he's
No, I
so
agree.
good. He fumbled that ball, and then I think there were two reasons he didn't catch that ball. The number one reason I would chalk up to he knew he had to get into the end zone, and you could see that he was trying to catch it and find the end zone with his backside, which is hard to do. But then the other reason is, as that ball left Lamar Jackson's hand, the fumble was in his mind.
Yeah. Well, I think he was cradling the ball back. I think he was almost like if you're trying not to do the thing, which is lean forward,
trying not to drop it is what he was doing.
He was almost cradling it back. I think he was just nervy. I texted.
By all accounts, a great dude. Like saved somebody's life on a plane last year. Like is by all accounts a great. So I feel terrible that that's his whole offseason.
It was a weird game. I texted this to you and Steven afterwards, which is we felt like the Chiefs, they felt like the Bills, which is like they deserved to win. Like they really did everything they could have done to win that game. And they just had turnovers and they killed themselves. That's the kind of thing that you guys take for granted, like, people fumbling snaps and all kinds of shit.
It's the difference this year. You were talking about why the Bills, and the difference is Josh Allen figured out how to take care of the ball. Like that's
and Tyler
really
Bass hit
Josh
a 51-yard field goal. I'm like, this is like, am I on another planet? Like this is not the Bills.
Josh Allen just got really good this year.
Yeah, so I have the lowest of expectations. This team has already exceeded expectations for me this year. I hope we win. Obviously, we know the drill. If they don't win, I won't even acknowledge that the game happened. So just be prepared for that. But
I will acknowledge
it
either way. That is the beauty of taking a more sane approach.
It's just too painful.
Football.
It's too painful. Now, for listeners out there, if you have any fun ideas for what I should be doing, I'll still be in Costa Rica. What I should do during the Chiefs-Bills game, because I probably won't be able to watch, send me ideas. Yeah. Like I'm open to ideas about.
I should just text you throughout it with total misinformation. Like no matter what's happening, like if the Chiefs, which we don't blow anybody out ever, it's not our game style. But if we were, I should text you like, well, good luck in the Super Bowl, man. Like,
don't you dare!
I won't do it to you. I know. It'd be cruel. All right, yeah, people can send in their ideas. For those who actually listened through this entire Chiefs-Bills thing, I do have one more substantive thing to say, which is we have a grab and or, which is we talked all about the refugee stuff and the Afghan specific stuff. For those who listen to the show a lot, you've heard a couple of times in the show, Sean Van Diver, who is the founder of Afghan Evac, which is the larger umbrella organization that advocates at the governmental level for fighting for our Afghan allies and taking care of them once they're here. And AfghanEvac.org is a place where you can go. You can make a donation because it has become incredibly important that we have a real concerted and organized, as it has been, but it continue to be Afghan Evac campaign to help our allies over there. So if that's something you care about, I encourage you to go to AfghanEvac.org and to contact your members of Congress, House and Senate, because look, this is a bipartisan issue. There are a lot of Republicans who agree with us on this, and they need to hear about the need to bring more Afghan allies here as refugees. So I hope people will do that. You can find Ravi at Ravi M. Gupta on everything. You can find me at Jason Kander on everything. Please leave a 5-star review. Thank you to the Midas Mighty. And remember, we all have a platform. Make sure to use yours today.